everyone. I'm here with Eric, who just got first place in the DWC qualifier, meaning that he's now qualified for the World Championship, which will occur eventually. I'm not exactly sure. So he's just going to help us talk about his lineup a little bit, and then we'll go into the individual decks. So, why did you choose these four decks? Saj being the one you used for the playoffs, and the other three the ones you used for the Swiss portion. So, how did you arrive at these ones?
Well, the VAF is very standard. It's not super special, and VAF is just in a really strong position, so I brought VAF. Argon is also super strong hero. It's a kind of gimmicky list. It's not like everyone else plays, but like Argon can do almost anything he wants right now. I feel like that's just how strong he is. And Sirix and Charge for the playoffs were targeting Lionar mainly. Both mainly Siran, but it also does well against Argon, and it's with Nimbus they do surprisingly well against like Cassivas and Faye as well. That doesn't run mech. It's all right against mech as well. It's not great, but it works.
Right.
So
Yeah, you took two Vitruvian lists, and I think did anyone else have Vitruvian at all in the top eight, or were you the only one?
and like 5 people had double Lionar, which was the plan. So it worked out. I actually didn't try. I only ran into one player playing double Lionar, but yeah.
So this was a pretty metagamed lineup you had, and you kind of called it correctly. It sounds like.
Yeah, it was a gamble, and it was a lot of fun as well. It's not maybe what I would usually bring, but after playing more with it, they're just really strong. Like even on ladder, they're just really strong these days. If you play them, they're difficult to play as well, so it's interesting to play, and you learn so much. If you want to get good at duel list, a deck like this is super.
Right, and those are the vet decks you're talking
Yeah,
about, right?
yeah,
Okay.
the best deck.
So yeah, let's get into the individual decks and talk about some of the card choices. Um, Here we go. So this is your Augion deck, and I mean, I think what's most interesting about this deck is that it kind of looks like a Zaran deck with Augion as the general. Is that kind of like a thing you were going for, or like why did you kind of take this direction rather than a more standard tempo Augion? Like you don't even have lions in this deck, for instance. So how do you kind of arrive at this kind of build?
Lionor is what I've played the most, so I mess around a lot with Argon. I'm not convinced this is the best Argon list. It's just I want to do my own thing as well, kind of. But it's really strong. It's like Cassiva, you can out heal it and outlast it. It can both outlast players and it can out tempo them with some Force Lancers and really strong 3-drops, and then just outvalue with card draw with the Trinity Oath and Jammer. It's just Argon being really strong, so you can do whatever you will want with it, I feel like.
Right. Yeah.
Then we have like Lasting Judgments are for Sunsteel Defenders mainly, but they're quite good as well. I don't think I actually used one on a Sunsteel Defender, but it was a lot in the first day. There were a lot of Sunsteel Defenders, so I brought in Lasting Judgments.
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting. It's a non-damage removal spell, so it's also good against something like a Lantern Fox or something that you don't want to have to just bang down with stuff.
Yeah, it's very versatile, but it was mainly like the biggest tempo gain you use with it. It's usually Sunsteel, but it also like deals with Revenants in Cassiva, and it deals with ranged things against Riva, and yeah, it's very versatile. I think it's very underplayed in other lists.
Right. Yeah, I know. I think it's. I've seen it. Yeah, I play a lot of Sunsteel Defender decks, so I get eaten by the Judgment a good amount. But yeah, I think it's definitely an underplayed card. So I think this deck. It looks like it's kind of built around Lancer in a way. I think. So do you think Lancer is just so strong that kind of warping the tempo Augion build around that is worthwhile? Is Sunsteel the Sunforge Lancer just that strong of a card right now?
Like attack on the general is extremely strong. But as I said, like I'm not convinced this is actually the correct way to play Argon if you want the exact best list. But it does really well, and it's always good to bring lists where the opponents aren't sure what it is and how to play against it completely. It just helps. Yeah, normal meta decks are like you play them 20 times and you know exactly what to replace for them, and you learn these things. If you have a deck that's out of ordinary, it's just the opponent will, yeah, it. Not sure what I was going with.
Yeah, I mean, you
But
definitely have the ability to surprise people with, the cards you include. I mean, people aren't going to expect the lasting judgment, and they're not going to be worried about you, healing your general until you lay down that Sunforge Lancer. So, I mean, it's
yeah,
definitely something that's going to kind of sneak up on people. But yeah, I think this
I
is probably the most. I'm sorry, what was that?
yeah, I think the deck would need a bit more tweaking if you want to perfect it. Like the Lightbenders were actually an issue for me. They should be probably some looms since I do get the general attack damage and stuff like that.
Right, yeah, they have kind of the potential to dispel your most of your own minions too,
Yeah, exactly.
just with the way you have to play them. Okay, so yeah, we'll go into some of the next list, which is I think the Saj deck. Oh no, I'm wrong again. Okay, Magma, Voth. This looks like something we've seen before. It's kind of the rush thumping wave. We saw it kind of pre Rise of the Bloodborne, but now with a little more Drogon and Cryptographer. So, just briefly, do you want to kind of go over this deck and a couple of the choices? I think maybe like the Earth Sister is something that we don't see a ton right now. So kind of how did you, kind of land on this deck as your Magma list?
Yeah, and just think Bath is the strongest like overall. So I wanted to bring a Bath list, and it's not it. This isn't a special list really. Like you want the cryptographers, you want to get your attack up, and then you just outvalue with natural selection on removal, and yeah. I don't really have much to say about this one. It's very standard, I think.
Yeah,
It
this is I mean this is something we saw for months and months before the
yeah, it's
Entropic
a
Gaze came about, and yeah, if Entropic Gaze hadn't got nerfed, this would probably be a similar list with three Entropic Gazes,
yeah,
and that
exactly.
would be pretty strong. So where do you I mean, where do you think Voth like stands in the meta? Like, what is it? How do we? I think it's kind of like one of the pillars of the meta right now. What do you think kind of has a good shot against it? What were you hoping not to run into with this deck?
Uh, this deck, not much. Honestly, I feel like this deck was not gonna be an issue if it wasn't banned. Like winning with this deck would be fine, honestly.
You didn't. There's no decks you felt like you had a problem with. Is that because
No,
just kind of
you can lose to Argons that are out tempo or get like Regalia off or have enough healing, or you can lose to a lot of things. But I feel like Bath is almost favored against everything right now.
really? That's interesting. I love playing Vath. I just think like the burst damage kind of gives you always like a shot to win. You
Yeah,
can kind of always rattle off like the 9 damage or the 8 damage combo. It's kind of like you're never really out of the game if you can have a couple cards in hand, and you have the healing. He just has a ton of tools, and natural selection's such a strong card. I think, especially right now. That's the
yeah,
big tempo swing.
they have a lot of answers. They have out of hand damage. They have healing, and they get the attack on the general, which is super important. I, I stressed this on the Argon list as well.
Right.
Like just one attack on the general is a huge deal. The yeah, what the yeah.
Right. Yeah, no. Yeah, this is a list that I've played something similar to, and I really like
Yeah.
this type of Voth. So here we go. Here's what people are really looking for. This is your Xerix list. And you played two vet decks, and they're actually pretty similar,
Yeah, they're very very
which
similar.
is
I think it's just in the races for Le Mansers.
right, right.
I think that's the
So
only difference.
what you said you took two vet decks. So what is it about vet that you think is strong? Because no one is taking this right now. So what do you think people are kind of missing about it? And kind of how did you arrive at this list? Like especially the Bone Swarms, the Nimbus, the Sunset Paragon, like Inner Oasis. How'd you get all those cards in there? Um,
Well, I think the most valuable card is the Nimbus because it's just sick value. It's super hard to remove without proccing it at least once, or like silencing it is bad. You can silence it if you silence it if you play against an Argon, they have Lightbender probably, and then you have a 3/5 for 5, and they have a 3/3 4, and it's like 1 mana gave you 5 HP. That's a bad answer. Some Loom is also like you use a card and 2 still leaving a 3/8. That's a bad answer. Ephemeral Shroud is also like 2 mana and you leave a 1/1 body. That's also like not a good answer. And the same with the obelisks. Yeah, they get silenced. You don't really lose tempo. The only issue is Plasma Storm. I had a ban, so I could ban only the final. I had to run into a mag deck. So without Magmar being a thing or something you need to, I think Wet is really strong, and I also expected Lionar, double Lionar, which makes Wet a lot better.
what makes this so strong against Lionar specifically? Because you've mentioned that a couple times.
No, it's just they don't have the two. They don't have like they
Hey, one.
has a Devo.
Hey,
And
buddy. I
Magmar
think
has
your mic's going a little crazy.
no. Okay. Is it better or
Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
okay?
So, so yeah, what? So they don't have the answers to the
Yeah,
obelisks.
they don't have answers to Obelisk. They don't have answers to Nimbus, and they don't really have answers to Amara either. Like they don't have answers for one target that's not in range of getting hit.
Right.
Or yeah, like they don't have the reach to clear obelisks. Like Rivas or Revice. This is pretty good against Riva if you play the obelisks and not the bigger minions, not Nimbus and Amara. And against Cassiva, you can play. You want to look for the Nimbuses rather than. Yeah, it's just if you know what you're looking for in certain matchups, they're not at all bad. Like I was watching the stream after, and they were saying that Zerix is whatever. They were saying that wasn't good, but like if you know what you're looking for in the matchups, it just does super well. And as I said earlier to you, I'm not sure if that was when you started recording. The Sarge list is rank 1S now, so it's doing well on the ladder as well.
Right. So this works even outside of the tournament format. So
Yes.
yeah, like against like say Cassiva, like that's when you go for Nimbus because they have to do the damage to it. But like the Amara can get kind of tossed around or something. Is that kind of what you're like demonic lord? Is that kind of the thinking behind it? Or
Well, you need to win the value game as fast as possible. Like the value game, uh, like you have you either play tempo, you try to kill your opponent, or you play value and you try to win the board and then kill the opponent. And you have to realize which matchups you need to do which things. Against Cassiva, you need to win the board and then win kind of fast. So you need the Nimbuses out because there's for value.
right.
And yeah, against Argon, it's the same. You need the Nimbuses out because against if you run into Magmar, it's different because then you try to avoid plasmas as much as you can, or you try to keep things in your hand, and yeah, I don't know.
Right. No, this deck. Yeah, you have like kind of different game plans, and you definitely have to know what you're facing and how kind of your path to victory. You kind of have to know that and make sure
Yeah,
you.
it's actually a lot very different depending on what you're facing, what you're looking for, and as you can see, it rarely has it has ephemeral shrouds and paragons that are the only answer cards. So basically, everything in my hand is good to play. Like almost, I have Roshas and Bone Swarm. It's yeah, you very rarely have a weak turn.
Right. Yeah, and Bone Swarm's an interesting card that I've been playing a lot. After I saw it, I think one of Henry's lists actually, and I use it basically because you don't have a lot of reach sometimes with Vitruvian in terms of killing far away things, like Riva stuff and just some ranged units in general, and just kind of on the early turns you can kind of get a tempo advantage. How'd you find that card in the matches, and what do you think of that?
Yeah, to have it, and even if it gets played around, then you're forcing them to play around it, and it's almost always against Riva clears at least the 1/1, the Heartseeker, and yeah, it's almost never bad. Like even if you use it, just I've used it at turn one if I don't have a better thing to do, like just hitting, not killing a minion, just getting it to a 2/1, and that's fine if you're in a matchup where you need to, like against Argon, you want to get the board, so you're fine with just putting a Novelist, like a Pax or something, on the tile, and then playing a Bones War. Playing player two, of course.
Right. Yeah. It's Yeah, even if you need to play it a little bit, you don't need someone to really walk into. It's only a 2 mana card,
Yeah,
so
yeah, exactly. You don't have to wait until it's absolutely perfect. It's usually really good
right. Yeah,
anyway.
yeah, it doesn't have to be a big blowout. I think a lot of people, tend to hold cards until they're like the hugest blowout. But if you just play like a strong tempo game, sometimes you can just kind of take it with just strong value cards. Um, So yeah, this is a pretty interesting deck, and you do have a lot of cycles, so you do get to dig through your deck, with I think 8 cards that draw cards, so you can find those the different game plans. You can kind of set yourself up pretty well for that. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see if more people start taking some Vitruvian, and you have 22 drops, which I think is um, pretty high. In terms of 2 drops. And does that just give you like a ton of flexibility, really? Because you can kind of weave in different spells on your turns? Was that intentional, or did that just kind of happen as you built the deck? It just kind of came out that way?
Yeah, it's like a Whisper of the Sand. I don't really count it as a 2 drop. Like it is, but you never play it early, so it's special. And Russia's is also like you don't really play it, not with this list, since I don't run Doomcasters. I run Primus Twist, which is, we can talk about that later, I guess. But yeah, I have the 9 2 drops that are normal, and then I have answer 2 drops. Like Ephemeral Shroud, I would never play turn 1 as well. So it's like 9 regular 2 drops, and then 2 drops that are good when I need them.
Right, yeah, some of these aren't, going to be on turn 2. But yeah, I mean, just kind of the low mana cost lets you play, kind of different combinations of spells in a turn. You're not locked into the kind of one spell a turn thing, which is
Yeah.
interesting. So yeah, actually, let's just touch on that quickly. Why Primus Fist over the Dunecaster? Because I think a lot of people try to kind of go, heavy on the Dervish synergies, and you kind of just, Primus Fist is similar to Dunecaster, but isn't quite, the same type of, all in, because Dunecaster feels pretty bad if you don't have a Dervish on the board. So what was kind of the thought process there?
It's mainly to make the deck more consistent. I don't want to miss or play a 2/1 or a 1/1 on turn 1, playing player 1. So I want to have 8 or 9 2 drops, but it's rarely, like it's often that it doesn't, the HP on, like keeping, maybe you use it with the Russia's Doomcaster, and then you get the 4/2 and the 2/1. This case you get the 2/3. It's not a big deal. Like it's almost as good. And the 4/2 is of course silenceable and stuff. So it's I want to make the deck more consistent, and I want to be able to use it on other things than dervishes. And even when Dukecaster does what it does, it's not superior enough to be worth it, I think.
Right, yeah, even the upside isn't,
The
it's not
yeah,
not
it's
that
definitely
huge.
an upside, but the upside isn't big enough to make the difference.
Right.
Like this makes it more consistent. You can use it on all the minions instead of just the dervishes, and yeah,
Right, yeah, you can kind of get some utility out of like even the shroud can trade into something, or
exactly,
the
exactly.
nimbus can kill something significant, or the falcius, or even a different if you have a second Primus Fist. So yeah, I mean that's interesting. And yeah, you kind of just have the more stable body, and it definitely looks like you build for consistency because you have almost all three ofs except for a couple cards, and you have a lot of card drawing, cycling type of stuff. So is consistency something that you really kind of try to build into all your decks? Making sure you can hit, the cards you need at all, at the given time. Is that kind of? I know Solifid uses almost all three ofs in a lot of his decks. Do you kind of employ a similar methodology?
Yeah, for sure. Like I want my decks to do almost the same thing every game. I want them like I want to have Nimbus when I want the Nimbus in games, and I want to have the obelisks when I want obelisks. It's just I think that's how you should build it. Yeah, like you want it to be consistent and you want it to be strong.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense.
And yeah, yeah,
So yeah, now just the Saj deck. And the Saj deck is actually kind of interesting because of how similar it looks to the Xerix deck. Because it basically looks like you just kind of wanted to bring. You thought that Xerix deck was so good, you kind of wanted to play it twice. It looks like the only difference I
yeah,
think is you're playing two Allomancers instead of two Inner Oases. Is that
yeah. That's the only
correct?
difference. And it was exactly that thinking. I thought that Cyrix decks was doing so well in the first round, the first day, so I wanted to bring another one. And after playing with Sarge, I actually think she's superior. Like it's so often that I get to clear maybe a 2-3 healing mistake or something else with 2-2 on Cyrix. It's just not that big of a deal. So I actually find Sarge to be superior
Right. Yeah.
now.
The kind of the inability to place the dervish and the lack of the 2/2 is 2/2 is kind of like that's the break point is 2 health is something that can be cleared by the general, so it's not usually a huge value play, and sometimes it just gets like the 2/2s kind of get eaten because you kind of have such a large swarm that if they're going to clear your board, the one extra 2/2 generally doesn't add a ton there sometimes. um,
Yeah, for sure. And it also like you'll get it behind you, and then it doesn't do anything for 2 turns anyway. So
right, yeah.
Sarge board instantly, and I have found the hero power to be really good. You just like you control the board with obelisks. You almost never can let her hit minions because it's just not value enough for the moment. So it's even more zone control.
Hey, I think we might be having a mic problem again.
Really?
No, it might
Okay.
be. Oh, it's good now. Okay, sorry.
I
Yeah,
think I'm just talking away from it. So
yeah, it just gets a little robot-y sometimes. So yeah, so why just I guess the obvious question is why the Allomancers instead of the Inner Oasis in Saj? Is it just because you have less bodies to buff?
yeah, basically, like I felt like I I haven't like the Sarge deck. I didn't play this super much. I played the Cyrix deck, and then the day before, like the day I played the Saturday tournament, and then this deck was made during the period before the Sunday tournament. So I haven't really put super much time into it, but yeah,
Right.
like
This
I just felt that the Cyrix deck. Cyrix Hero Power within the races is a really good combo, since then Sarge doesn't actually have the hero power. Then in races might only hit 2 minions or 1 minion, and then it's just better to drop an Island Monster.
right. Yeah, Allomancer is kind of interesting because it's more often. It's kind of interesting because it's more often a Xerix card because it plays into the Dervish synergy. Dervish Saj isn't something that I think a lot of people gravitate towards. But you just think the Bloodborne spell is really powerful in Saj right now. Um, so
Yeah.
I mean this might be kind of a weird question, but what were you clearing a lot with the Bloodborne spell? Like what were the points where you were really happy to have it compared to just a little dorky tutu?
Oh, I I had against Siran where I got to clear a healing mystic and the Sunriser in the same game, and that's way more than Zerik's hero power will do. And I've had games where it just helps clear an Iron Cliff or something like that. Like it helps, but it's not doing like it's not being game winning. But yeah, I'm not saying the Sarge hero power is super good. I'm saying I think it's superior to Zerik's hero power.
Right. So this is kind of, I mean, we've gone over your decks, and I think we talked about, most of this deck. So I kind of just want to ask you a question, a little more generally, if that's okay. Because you built basically a Xerix deck in Saj, which I've probably said that sentence 15 times, but just to
Yeah.
reiterate, do you kind of think that maybe people tunnel vision too much on the Bloodborne spell instead of just playing, powerful strategy? Because, we have some generals that are used less often than, others. We have Starhorn, Kalios, Saj, Kara right now. So these are kind of, not used a lot. Do you think maybe some of the reasons they come off as weaker is because people try to go overboard with utilizing their Bloodborne spells instead of just playing powerful strategies overall? Could that be a possibility? Because it looks like you just kind of, you didn't build this deck around the Saj Bloodborne spell. Do you think sometimes people go crazy with like all the artifacts and the ways to really try to build into that, and they just kind of end up playing weaker strategies, and that makes Saj maybe look less strong?
Yeah, I think it's definitely a case in a lot of scenarios. But I think Virtuven is over the top in it because I don't think Virtuven's hero powers are that good. But it's also like I think people are just very stubborn sometimes with terrorists or following the meta because I think there's a lot of decks here out there that are just waiting to happen. Like I still miss Hailstone Prison. I haven't seen it in ages, and I think it's a great card. I think like I ran into a Grow Magmar. I think that could work because like Silence is just not strong right now. I don't know. I think they're don't be afraid to experiment because like you can make stuff work that doesn't seem to work or that people consider bad. Yeah, I know.
Oh yeah, I mean, people, were saying. I mean, there's a lot of posts you'll see that it's either Kara or Vitruvian that people are complaining about, and they just feel like they're super weak, and you took half of your lineup as Vitruvian and won a tournament with a lot of strong players. So yeah, it's definitely
Yeah,
possible.
I've
Um,
tried to make Kara work. I'm not been able to.
Not yet. Maybe
I'm
maybe
working on it. I'm
maybe
working
for
on it.
maybe by the time Worlds comes around, you'll have a
Yeah,
Kara
maybe.
deck.
Maybe.
Just one thing, I forgot to kind of ask you about just the Sunset Paragon. That's a card that pops up occasionally as a sideboard card in the melee, and occasionally in main decks. What is that? What is that meant to answer? Just real quick.
It's really good against it's it's really good against mech, of course, but it's actually very versatile since it can damage Nimbus, it can kill your Amara if you want to do that, if you need the HP, and it's an answer. But currently on the ladder list I'm playing, it's Meltdowns instead. I'm not playing the Sunset Paragons.
Oh, you playing Meltdowns instead.
Yeah,
Okay, so this is yeah. I think you see more mechs in tournaments sometimes. It ends up being kind of a good way to get a consistent, pretty easy to play game plan. Okay, well, thank you for explaining all your decks. This is about half an hour, so we won't take any longer.
okay.
Congratulations on your win. I really appreciate everything.
Yeah,